Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to talk about why you should never get rid of your old devices. Okay, so I'm here with some of the devices that I use for testing on a regular basis. I kind of feel like the principal who gets brought into his office and I show you all the confiscated items, or those DEA agents that talk about things that got confiscated on the way into the country. We confiscated these devices, through customs. People trying to smuggle these things through customs. But actually, these are just some of my devices, and I try to go around and get all the ones that I have here in the office to show you, but I realize that some of them are still at home. Right? So what I'll do is I'll go through the different ones. I'm sure you guys probably have loads of devices of your own. I'll just go through some of them. I used to have more, and it used to be something that I would go on on eBay. Every time I see something on eBay that was available, or if I get my kids a phone and then they move on to another phone, I would always take the old one and just make sure that I have it for testing device, especially if it's one that's not locked to a network or anything like that, something we could just go ahead and use. All right, so let me just go through some of the go around the table here. Now, first of all, it's the devices that I use on a daily basis. So here's my current phone right now, which is a Nexus 6P, which is a stock Google phone, and it's about 2 years old, and it's really starting to show its age, right? It's starting to reboot itself every so often. So very quickly, this is going to become my my new testing phone, and I might go for an iPhone 8. I'm thinking about going for an iPhone this time because I've been on Android for the last 3 or 4 phones. Right, and it's always helpful to go around. For tablets, my current device is the iPad Pro 12-inch. Right, but let me just go through some of these other ones. So over here on this side, I have my Android devices. Right, so I've got this. This is my old phone here, which is the Nexus 5, which is another stock Google phone. Right, and I've had this for a few years. This is one that I'm constantly reflashing the memory on. So sometimes I'll put Android 4 on there, sometimes Android 5, and I'll just go through and I'll start upgrading it all again, which is kind of it's a hassle, but it's the kind of thing you can't do with your normal phone. Now, if it comes to just putting an app out onto the App Store, like one of the ones under Overpass, I usually don't worry about it that much. I'll do device testing, right? Just do a little bit of device testing. Well, I'll do enough device testing, right? But I don't worry about going back to previous versions because I assume that the APIs and everything should be able to handle that. But when it comes for client projects, that's usually a lot more serious. They ask a lot more questions. Like, are you sure it's going to work on with this version, all this stuff? So this is one that I'm constantly going back on. Right? I have another Android phone, which was Android 2, right? And it was a I can't remember what it was called, but it's one that I still have at home, and I'm still holding on to it, but I rarely ever use it for testing. I also got this 7-inch Amazon Kindle Fire, which it seems like once a year, or at least once or twice a year, Amazon will really bring down the prices of the Kindle Fire. So I got this one for 39 pounds. The only time I ever use this thing is for testing, right? It's in my bag, right? It's all beat up and everything because the bag gets thrown around and everything like that. But I'll use it for testing, for different devices as well. Yeah, mainly if I'm going to put something on the Kindle store, I want to make sure that I'm not using any Google Play dependencies that are going to be interfering with it and everything, and make sure that the in-app purchases and everything work. But I don't put that much stuff to the Amazon App Store that much anymore because it's just too much of a hassle. And for me, it hasn't been that rewarding. But I know a lot of people who say most of their downloads come from Amazon, which sounds good. I have an iPad Air, I bought this for testing a client application about 3 years ago, and I only got it for testing. Right. One thing you don't see here is I have a Nexus 10-inch tablet Android, which I was really happy with. I bought that one, and I got lots of extra memory for it, because that was going to be my day-to-day tablet, right? And then I got this iPad, and I thought it was really nice, right? I'm not an Apple fanboy, but I'm not an Android fanboy either. I will swap loyalties, here and there. It's good to know how the different operating systems work, right? But I really thought this was a great little device, and it only had 6. I got the lowest specs just because it was just a testing device. and it became my day-to-day device. That's why when I got the iPad Pro, I went for the extra memory and everything like that. But this is something I use all the time, especially for client stuff. It is, again, it's the kind of thing where I'm constantly, doing factory resets on it and everything like that, just to make sure that there's nothing on there, the dependencies, all that kind of stuff. And again, a lot of this stuff depends on the projects, right? So I've also over here, I've got an iPhone 5C, which has been very useful. Again, this is one that it's never been used as an actual phone. It's got a pay-as-you-go SIM card in it. I bought it, I reluctantly bought it, like I didn't want to, right? And then I've got this old iPod Touch, which I rarely use, but occasionally, if I want to test some older games just to see if they work. But because Apple's always moving on and dropping support for lower devices, it's become less and less an issue. And this could go, I mean, you can't give these things away now. It'll probably go in a landfill somewhere, unfortunately. Right? Now, the reason I hold on to these devices, because a lot of, especially new developers think, why can't I just use a simulator? And a lot of times you can, right? But for a lot of things. On the Android side, one of the things that we've always needed devices for is when we do things that are really difficult to test on the emulator, on the Android emulator. Stuff like barcode scanner. We've done some stuff for clients for barcode scanner. Stuff with we've done a lot of Bluetooth apps for clients actually, where they communicate via Bluetooth. And I know, there's probably some way through the emulator to, open up ports and run all these kind of stuff, but I just find it way too difficult. For me, it's always easier just to plug the device in, open up the Chrome Dev Tools or whatever, or the Logcat, and be able to see the things go in and write to the console, all that kind of stuff. So these are becoming. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention here was my Android watch, which is something I bought. I bought this and I justified the purchase thinking I'm going to put EarSpy on this, and I never did. But I got it out anyway because one day I'm going to do something with Android Wear. So that, in terms of that. Now when it comes to the iPhone side, the iOS side, for me, it's device testing is crucial because we've had so many apps we put out that started crashing because we just tested them on the simulator. And usually, and an iPhone crash is a lot messier because you don't get any feedback. It's just sort of the app's open, it's closed, right? So you have to run this thing in the emulator, and we've had so many apps that work perfectly well in the simulator, but they run out of memory on an actual physical device. And usually it's because we have image assets that are too high resolution, that are too big, or we have something that's happening, like we might have, a lot of times we'll have an event that's firing more than once, and we don't pick that up on the emulator because we're running that on a Macintosh and with a lot of memory, and it can handle it fine. Once we go to a physical device, everything starts crashing. So this is one of the things where, if I had to choose between test devices, an Android or an iPhone, I would always go for, I would go for iPhone, because that's the one that, it seems to be very, the development environment using Xcode and using the iOS simulator on a Mac is much more forgiving than an actual physical device is, right? So, and one of the things I've never done but I've always wanted to do, or one of these days I will do, is doing some actual unit testing and I've used those services like, it used to be AppThwack, but now they got Firebase, have those device tools where you can upload it and then you run it on simultaneous devices. That's something I haven't really used yet. I've used AppThwack in the past, but not in terms of the full unit testing and everything like that, but it's something that it should do in the future. So anyway, my question to you guys is, what kind of device? Oh, and the other thing is Windows Phone. One of the reasons I've never done anything for Windows Phone, even though I've got Windows PCs, a lot of the code we have can port over to Windows, because we use Corona SDK, or we'll use Ionic and stuff like that, which probably with a very few small changes we could go over to Windows. But I haven't wanted to get an actual Windows Phone, and just because I think device testing is very, very crucial, and just relying on the emulator is something I haven't wanted to do. But okay, so as we end this week, right, as this Friday, let me ask you guys, what kind of devices do you guys use? Do you do a lot of device testing? Do you have are you like me, where you have lots of things hanging around, and you got and by the way, if you have kids, these things go missing sometimes, and you have to go track them down, right? You say no, that's for work, right? So what kind of devices do you have? Are you the kind of person who keeps hold of them and everything like that? And also, I want to say to anybody out there who's not an app developer, when you do move on to your new phone, like I'm going to be going to my new phone here pretty soon, donate that old phone to somebody. Don't just chuck it or sell it or give it to your kids. Give it to an app developer. They need it. Anyway, that's it for today. That's it for this week. I'll talk to you guys on Monday.